A 15-year-old girl disappears during a peaceful walk, and the truth doesn't come out for nearly 30 years. But when it does, it rocks an entire community to its core. How could this happen in a place where nothing ever does? And more importantly, how did the monster hide for so long? This isn't just a story about loss. It's about failure, betrayal, and a breakthrough that came decades too late. The perfect town, the perfect family, the perfect lie. Nestled high in the pine-covered mountains of northern Washington, there's a place that once felt untouched by darkness. A town so picturesque it could have been pulled from a postcard. Streets lined with flower boxes. Kids racing their bikes to the ice cream parlor. The kind of place where people still waved at their neighbors, and front doors were rarely locked. And at the heart of this idyllic town lived the Ray family. Warm, loving, respected. And their daughter, Danielle, 12 years old, whip-smart, curious about everything. A spark in her eyes that made everyone around her feel like the world was still good. She wasn't your typical kid. While others played video games, Danielle was cataloging local plant species in her nature journal. She dreamed of becoming an engineer, of curing diseases, saving animals, and making the world better. Her mom often said she was born with a purpose. Her teachers said she was destined for something big. And maybe she was, until one summer evening took it all away. The day everything changed, August 13th, 1994. It was warm, just shy of 80 degrees. A golden haze settled over the hills as the sun began its slow descent. 4:45 p.m. Danielle laced up her sneakers, grabbed her little canvas journal, and told her mom she was going to walk the ridge trail, a familiar path, her favorite place to think. She promised she'd be home by dinner. 5:30 p.m., her mom looked out the window expecting to see Danielle bounding up the path. Nothing, just the soft rustle of trees. 6:12 p.m. Panic rising, she drove the trail route herself. That's when she saw it, the old blue pickup truck, the one no one in town seemed to recognize. By 8 p.m., the whole town was searching, flashlights cutting through the trees, dogs barking into the night, people calling Danielle's name like they could pull her back with their voices. But no one found her. Not that night, not the next. Then, 2 days later, a volunteer searching the Lower Creek bed made the discovery. Danielle's body, hidden in a shallow, muddy stream. Her clothes were torn, her shoes are missing, her hands scratched like she'd tried to fight. The official report came swiftly: homicide. But behind closed doors, the truth was even worse. The missteps. The sheriff's office, overwhelmed and undertrained, fumbled nearly every step of the investigation. They let untrained volunteers walk through the crime scene before it was taped off. They didn't properly bag crucial evidence. Danielle's journal was soaked and left to dry on a radiator. Witnesses who reported seeing the blue pickup truck earlier that week never followed up with. And then, the secret they buried deepest of all. The autopsy showed clear signs of sexual assault. But Danielle's family wasn't told. Not in 1994, not in 1995. They didn't find out until 7 years later, when a new sheriff quietly handed over a copy of the original autopsy report. Why the delay? Because according to internal memos, the department feared public hysteria. They wanted to preserve the town's peace. So they lied, covered up, buried the evidence with bureaucracy and fear, and with it, they buried any chance of finding her killer while he was still alive. The DNA clue that took decades. For over 25 years, the case sat cold. Every so often, Danielle's mother would call, hopeful there was something new, a tip, a match, anything. And then, in 2021, a miracle of science cracked open what human failure had sealed shut. A degraded DNA sample, lifted from Danielle's torn clothing, was processed using new genetic genealogy software technology that hadn't existed in the 90s. A team of forensic genealogists spent months painstakingly tracing DNA patterns, cross-referencing with public genealogy databases, and building a massive family tree. One by one, branches were pruned, and finally a name emerged from the leaves: Paul Hutchinson. Paul Hutchinson, the hidden monster. To the town, Paul was just that quiet guy who owned a few rental cabins near the lake. A family man, a churchgoer, no criminal record, not even a speeding ticket. No one suspected him, not even once. But when detectives knocked on his door, things changed. At first, he played dumb, smiled politely, and answered questions. Friendly, but guarded. Until they told him about the DNA match. That's when everything shifted. His smile faded. His hands began to tremble. And then he asked one chilling question. What happens now if I say I want a lawyer? He knew. He knew the game was over. The suicide and aftermath. 2 days after the interview, Paul Hutchinson was found dead in his garage. Carbon monoxide poisoning. The engine of his silver sedan was still humming softly, almost like a lullaby for the damned. A garden hose, dirty and cracked, snaked from the tailpipe, looped into the cabin through the barely cracked rear window. On the passenger seat, there was a single sheet of notebook paper. The handwriting was jagged, uneven, as if scrawled by a hand trembling from guilt or fear or both. To others, it was the coward's way out, a desperate escape from the reckoning he knew was coming. To Danielle's family, it was both. There would be no trial, no chance to see him squirm under cross-examination, no moment to stare him down and demand answers, no opportunity to ask the one question that kept them awake at night. Why? He stole her life, and then he stole their closure. For the detectives, it was the end of a case. For the media, it was a headline that would fade in a week. But for Danielle's mother, who still set a place at the dinner table, and her father, who sat silently in her room every night, it was a final, infuriating silence. Justice had not been served, only silence. And in that silence, the question still screamed, justice? Too late? It took nearly 30 years for Danielle's family to learn the name of the man who killed their daughter. But justice? That never came. Her father never got to see him face a jury. Her mother never got to ask, did she scream? There are still questions no one can answer. What if the sheriff had done his job? What if the DNA had been tested sooner? What if someone had stopped Paul Hutchinson before he hurt Danielle? Or someone else? The town still feels different now. The shadows stretch longer. The smiles are fewer. And every August 13th, a candle burns by the old ridge trail, where a bright young girl once chased butterflies, with dreams too big for such a small place. Instead, she became a name in a cold case file until science caught up with justice. This is the story of a life stolen, a case mishandled, and a truth buried in silence until it roared back, louder than ever. If you believe in justice for cold case victims, like this video, share it, and never stop asking questions.